Before we get into this episode, there's something that might be of interest that I wanted to tell you about. Scene and Heard, who run this podcast, have been asked by Scotland Food and Drink to undertake a strategic review of the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards. Now, these Excellence Awards have been going for almost 20 years and are a huge mainstay of the food and drink sector. But it's time to ensure that they're still relevant. So if you have ever been involved in the Scotland Food and Drink Excellence Awards, or even if you've ever had an opinion about them, we would love for you, please, to complete our survey. So if you go to the On Farm Twitter, which is at @on_farm UK, and click the link in the bio, there will be a tab in there that will take you to the survey, and it should only take you a very short while to complete, but we would be enormously grateful. Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the On Farm podcast. It's Anna here with you this week, and we actually have an all-female episode this week because I am joined by a lady named Carmen. Carmen is from an organisation called Firstport, and I'm not going to steal her thunder by telling you what she does, but I will tell you that she's been working on a great project which is looking at innovative solutions to rural climate change challenges. Now, as we know, those are quite numerous, but she's got some fantastic examples of what's being done to combat that. Do keep listening to the end because there's actually an opportunity of some potential funding for next year's round of the challenge, but she's going to talk to us about the challenge this year and some of the amazing applications she's had and some innovative solutions that she's had. Now, this episode is once again sponsored by Gillespie Macandrew, the Scottish legal firm, so we are incredibly grateful to them and send them our thanks. But meantime, I hope you enjoy listening and perhaps feel a little bit inspired.
My name is Carmen Paputa-Dutu, and I am the Social Innovation Challenge Programme Manager for Firstport. Firstport are Scotland's agency for social entrepreneurs, so we support startup social entrepreneurs to start their businesses. And we have a range of different funding and support opportunities to do that. The Social Innovation Challenge is specifically looking at very innovative ideas that people have that enable them to look at the most pressing challenges of our times. So in the past, we had a slightly different program called the Social Innovation Competition, which would award three £5,000 awards every year in response to a theme. This was funded by the Scottish Government, and we are still supported by the Scottish Government. But this year we launched the Social Innovation Challenge, which is a redesigned program. This time we had a 50,000 pot award pot available. And again, we looked at a specific theme, this time being climate change challenges faced by rural communities in Scotland. So we are very keen to get innovative solutions from the communities themselves in response to these challenges that we know that they are facing.
And I think it would be fair to say, although correct me if I'm wrong, that people in rural areas can be disproportionately affected by climate change issues, whether that's because of infrastructure challenges and transport challenges. Is that fair to say? Is that one of the reasons why you focused on rural areas for this particular challenge?
Absolutely. So we know that people in rural communities, as you say, are disproportionately affected by climate change challenges. But knowing that, and there is research available on that, before we launched the challenge, we wanted to make sure that we really understood what that meant. So I engaged with stakeholders and social entrepreneurs from across Scotland, most of them living or doing their social enterprises in rural areas, to really understand how those challenges are affecting them in their day-to-day lives. There were issues caused by the infrastructure or the lack of infrastructure, the effects of, for example, extreme weather events, which we are seeing more and more, were felt much more in communities, and the general resilience of these communities was something that they could really feel as being undermined by these extreme weather events, and the lack of infrastructure, and something that they really wanted to focus on. So that was very important to us, to make sure that we heard them and that we were looking for solutions that could contribute to that resilience that the rural communities have.
What do you think really are the key issues facing rural communities at the moment with specific relation to climate change?
So some of the strongest themes we got from the user engagement with around the challenges faced by rural communities were transport was one of the big ones. the lack of infrastructure and the high carbon cost of actually getting from anywhere to anywhere in rural areas. And of course, there are equity impacts there as well, because people have the same rights to get the services or appointments as anyone living in an urban area, but actually it comes with a much higher carbon and monetary cost. So transport was a big one. The lack of options around renewable energy, especially around retrofitting homes, because a lot of homes in rural areas are actually quite an old stock, or they can't really be easily retrofitted. So that involves a huge cost. And then there are also issues around actually getting contractors to come and do this work. There is either no one available or someone available in 6 months' time at a huge cost. And that was also seen as, potentially a lack of, there's just not enough demand in rural areas, or it's not aggregated demand, so contractors aren't willing to travel. There were issues around resilience in the face of extreme weather events. So a lot of rural communities have been completely cut off by some of the storms we've had in recent years, sometimes for days on end, where they've had no access to power or electricity. And that really highlighted the need to become more resilient and more self-sustainable within their local areas. And there were also issues around access to local produce or sustainably grown produce, as well as waste disposal. And some of the farming practices aren't. Sometimes things happen that shouldn't happen, and even when legislation is introduced that should be banning the unsustainable practices, there is no support on the ground to actually help people make the transition. They are sort of left in a limbo with no support to actually change how they do things. So quite a lot there actually to be addressed.
So in summary, the challenge involves a £50,000 pot of money, and social enterprises across Scotland who've got an innovative idea to combat climate change were eligible to apply for some funding from this pot. Now, I don't think you know yet who has been successful because applications have not long closed. But can you tell me a little bit about some applications that you've had, to give us some examples, or applications that you've worked with or projects that you've worked with in the past, just to kind of give us an idea of what types of things this pot is going to be contributing towards?
Of course. So as I mentioned, the Social Innovation Challenge being a redesigned program, it's not been run in this way before. And as you said, even though we don't know yet who the winner will be, we have recently announced the shortlist. So I can tell you about the 4 shortlisted ideas.
Oh, yes, please do. Please do.
So we received a total of 13 applications this year in response to the challenge. And the 4 shortlisted applications are from different corners of Scotland. So we have one from the Far North Community Development Trust, who are based in the very north of Scotland. So they are looking at fixing the very, very difficult problem of transport in rural communities, creating a community transport enterprise that would offer door-to-door affordable transport services to people, especially, for services that we take for granted, going to a hospital, going to a dentist, going to the bigger shops, all these things that we in urban areas take for granted. They are real problems in rural communities, and they're looking at doing this with electric vehicles, so also adding some carbon savings, therefore addressing the climate change issue as well. Another one of the shortlisted applications is from Ullapool, so Ullapool Unpacked, looking at tackling plastic waste. So they, at the moment, they have a refill trailer where they offer some products available to buy in bulk with no plastic packaging, and they are looking at scaling up their enterprise to offer activities and workshops around environmental and sustainable living, as well as more options. We also have a shortlisted application from the Isle of Iona. So they are looking at renewable energy and using ground source heat networks to address, again, the very difficult challenge of actually providing more affordable and more sustainable heat to the communities on a world-renowned island that is actually really hard to deliver these changes to, because a lot of the housing stock is actually in conservation areas. And again, something that we heard through the research is that it's really hard to do any retrofitting in rural areas because there's just no one available to do it, and it's really hard to get the actual contractors and staff to go there and make these changes. And then the final shortlisted application is from Nephews in Galloway. Propagate have a food hub, the Glenkins Food Hub, and they are looking at using local food producers, and again, focusing on regenerative farming practices and sustainable farming practices, and offering food grown through these sustainable methods to the local community to make sure that they can access fresh quality produce on a regular basis. So quite a mix. There's not one theme. There's actually four different themes, but we are very excited to be looking at these 4 solutions, and we will be working with all of them to see how we can support them in the future.
It sounds like, as well, regardless of who gets selected, it sounds like that's four new podcasts for me, because I could go and chat to each of those. And as you say, they're all very different, so we'd get a great different story from each of them. So how does it work then? Does just one project get selected and they receive the whole £50,000 pot? Is that how it works? Or do you divide the pot up between who you consider to be sort of the most impressive projects?
So again, the applicants, they were able to bid for up to the maximum amount. So we only have one pot of £50,000, and they will go to a panel, they will pitch their ideas, and then the panel will choose the winner because they have all pretty much bid for close to the maximum or the maximum. We won't be able to spread it across them, but we have made a commitment that because these are all good ideas, and I'm sure you can see that.
Yes.
We will see how we can support them and work with them to promote all of these 4 ideas, regardless of who the winner of the award money is.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the thing. One of the reasons why they've applied to your pot is perhaps because there aren't many other avenues that they can go down to try and get funding for these ideas, and often it's very difficult to self-fund something like that. So I guess that's one of the benefits, is that you're enabling a project to happen that otherwise may have never seen the light of day.
Yeah, I mean, credit where credit is due. A lot of these enterprises access support from other funders as well, and we're sort of part funding them if we do indeed manage to, if they are one of the winners. It's a feature of social enterprise nowadays that they do have to have different networks and work with several funders in order to get an idea off the ground, and that's part of why we started the Social Innovation Challenge, and it is the biggest grant that Firstport are offering at the moment, and we are really excited to be able to support a really worthy social enterprise. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see who the winner will be. Yeah,
well, likewise, we'll follow the process and hopefully speak to them for a future podcast. And as I said, maybe the other 3 as well. I suppose I'm curious, we identified, didn't we, at the beginning, that rural populations are disproportionately affected by climate change. What would you think are the key barriers then for them to solving some of these problems? We've identified what the problems are, but what are the barriers to prevent them from... Nobody can wave a magic wand, but what's stopping them from having solved some of these issues before now?
Well, funding is obviously one of the big issues, but also there's quite a lot of energy and commitment required. These solutions, the ones that work, most often come from the community themselves, but that is a lot to ask, and quite often people have to self-mobilize and put their own time and their own energy into coming up with these solutions, going to the funders, getting support. So it's quite a lot of commitment to ask from the members of the community themselves. But I think that the more we share knowledge and we share information about what works in a particular area, and if communities can inspire each other and help each other, and there is a lot of appetite for that kind of stuff, more can be replicated. Again, when we were doing the research, something that we heard from the people we were talking to was that innovation means something very different in a rural context than it does in an urban context. And that was something we really wanted to take on board. So something that's new in a particular community, whether it's new to that village or whether it's new to the area, even if it's been done in Glasgow 7 times over, that doesn't mean it's not innovative in the local context. We need to recognize that, and we need to continue putting resources behind the people who want to do something and support them to do it. And yes, that can be funding, that can be opportunities for time and skill sharing. But there are also issues that, with all the goodwill in the world, communities won't be able, for example, to fix all the roads in in all of the highlands or all of the rural areas. So there are also issues that will need a bigger response.
I know, and you will have known or learnt through your research that rural people are quite a determined and kind of tenacious bunch of people. So I'm curious as to what strengths you think that all of these rural people have in all of these shortlisted projects that will enable them to overcome some of these challenges and to really make that money deliver a hugely positive outcome. What is it about these people and these communities that's likely to generate such positive work?
Oh, well, that's quite a difficult question to answer because there are just so many strengths. And all of these 4 ideas, what really set them apart from the other ones that we got was the strength of the community buy-in and how much they actually worked and involved the communities themselves in developing these solutions. So it wasn't just someone deciding, I'll fix your problem, this is what you need. It was actually all developed by involving everyone and listening to everyone and having that sort of democratic approach to solution building, which I think is really admirable because that takes time. That takes so much time and so much effort. And like I said, it's all self-driven. So there's that, but there's much more awareness, I think, of what needs to be done and how some modern or current practices aren't sustainable. So for this challenge in particular, looking at environmental challenges and climate change, there's much more awareness of how actually things are changing. The growing seasons are changing, the fish populations are changing. We have more and more extreme weather events, which have left some communities, with no power, no electricity for days on end. So there's much more awareness that something needs to be done now.
Yeah. Again, I'm curious because I think as individuals and even as small groups of people and small communities, it's easy to fall into a trap of thinking, oh, I'm just one person or we're just one tiny community. We can't make an observable or concrete contribution to ameliorating climate change. And yet, actually, that's not true because you've seen 13 and now shortlisted to 4 small communities who can make a difference. But how do you think these projects, which in the grand world scheme of things are small projects, but how can they contribute to the much wider challenge that we're all facing and that the whole country and the whole world is facing?
Well, I think we need more of this because it actually shows that, one individual can make a difference. And I know, I was talking about the community buy-in and how much community involvement there has been, but some of them have been driven by 1 or 2 individuals with, mobilizing the whole community. And actually, one person's passion and ambition can really be the catalyst that's necessary to bring everyone together. And I think we need more of these examples because it shows that there's an alternative. It challenges the status quo, and that then can inspire other people to make their changes and to change something in their communities or to, get together with someone else and do something bigger if that's what they want to do. And it all adds up. All these little changes, they all add up. And just knowing that there is an alternative, is hugely impactful, I think, and we do need more of that.
Is it part of the commitment that they make upon receiving the funding that they must then, I suppose, effectively tell their story to enable other people to learn from what they've done? Because, actually you've got phenomenal case study material, haven't you, here for how to demonstrate best practice and to show other people what can be achieved with effectively, small-ish amounts of money. So do you look to the communities to use themselves and to demonstrate themselves as an example to others?
Yes, and that's definitely something we're looking at. We're already in discussion with the 4 shortlisted applicants to see how we can support them in creating case studies about the changes and what they're doing. But I think that comes naturally because social enterprise is all about giving back. So even before starting these conversations, again, it was very apparent in their applications that they wanted to share everything that they could about what worked, what didn't work, their business models, to help other communities who might be facing similar challenges implement their own solutions. And I think that's really admirable, and that's what, it's at the very heart of social enterprise ethos, and undoubtedly it will help others in the future come up with their own solutions.
And I suppose the third wheel, or the third leg of the stool, you've got funding. The funding will come to whoever is selected. You've got the innovative idea, but then the third leg of the stool, I suppose, is skills to be able to use that funding and that idea and actually deliver upon them. How does that work? Is there part of the pot, or are there contacts and within Firstport and your network that can also help to upskill people and give them the tools that they need to maximise the benefit of this idea and this money?
Absolutely. So whoever we do end up awarding the funding to, they will have regular contact with ourselves, and we will be looking at what their ambitions, what their goals, and what their milestones are, and the skills that they need to get there, and where we come in and how we can support them. And that will depend, on a case-by-case basis. They might need a lot of support, or they might know exactly what they're doing, but we will still want to be involved in the conversation to make sure that where we can add value, we will. Our strength is very much in our network of social entrepreneurs that we have supported over the years. So we will be looking to create opportunities to bring people together. And, networking sounds like such a simple thing, but actually there's so much value in it. So we are already looking at an event on the 31st of October. We'll have an event in Perth where we will announce the winner of the Social Innovation Challenge. And that will be one of the first sort of networking opportunities, and also an opportunity to share the news about these 4 case studies.
This is about legacy as well, isn't it? We've talked about case studies, but actually it's creating legacies within these pockets and these communities that could last for decades, if not longer. And I guess that's what's so inspiring about it. It must be frustrating for you that only one can be, or we think only one can be selected, and when you've seen so many projects come through that have got so much potential.
Oh, it's only one that will potentially get the Social Innovation Challenge funding, but as I said, we are committed to working with all of these 4 shortlisted applicants to see how else we can support them. For some of them, depending on what stage they are, some of our other funding programs might be an option. So we will be continue to work with them and support them however way we can, because they are good ideas and there are things that they are needed. And more than anything, they all deliver really strong social impact. They all have the potential to make people's lives better, and that's what we're all about. So there are the environmental concerns, of course, but there's also benefits to be gained by, people, and we do want to enable that as much as possible.
You can't separate it, can you? Really, you've searched, the challenge searched for solutions to climate change, but actually you can never separate that from communities and people and business and commerce and volunteering and goodwill, and all of those things fall under the same umbrella. I think it's really inspiring. And is this an annual challenge? Will I be speaking to you again next year? Do you think about what the theme is for next year and what's coming forward then?
Yes, I'm very glad you asked. So we will have a different theme every year. So as soon as this challenge is finalized, we will start looking at what the theme for next year will be. So we'll have some way of determining this with the help of other people as well. So we won't set the challenge. We will be actually looking at what the most pressing challenges of our times are. I think we all have clues as to what that might be, considering the times we're living in. But yes, we will announce a new theme early next year, and then we'll have a new Social Innovation Challenge open around springtime.
Perfect. So there you have it. Climate change is a challenge, but individuals and groups and communities and social enterprises have got a whole host of solutions that are all coming forward, and I think that collectively they can help us to all feel a little bit more upbeat and optimistic about how we can face that challenge. So keep an eye on the Firstport website if you think you have a project that might be eligible for next year. But that's all for this week. Thank you once again to Carmen, and thank you once again to Gillespie Macandrew for supporting this episode, and we shall be back. Actually, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time, because next week is half term for the majority of Scotland. So we're taking a week off, but back again in 2 weeks.